What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Iron Roots podcast. And today we're going to talk to you about a strength coach that I have yet to meet, but who acts almost as a mentor to me because I've came across so many of his articles. I've heard so many stories about what he's done. I've even been gifted with videos of his training methods that has inspired everything I've done from a trainee to a trainer. It's just awesome. Old school at its best. I'm talking about nobody else but Dr. Ken Leistner. Let's get into the show.
This is PLAE's Iron Roots,
A podcast dedicated to uncovering the strength legends, the training methods, and the stories around physical culture and iron history. I'm your host, Zach Even-Esh. Grab yourself a protein shake, chalk up, and prepare to travel back in time through some of the most awe-inspiring stories of iron history. It's go time. So we're talking about Dr. Ken Leistner, and I had never heard of Dr. Ken until I first opened the first location of the Underground Strength Gym. So it was about early September, early October, and it was a cool fall night. And I remember the gym was kind of closing out. It was somewhere around 7:45, and I noticed a big guy hovering around outside of the gym. So I didn't know if he wanted to come in or speak with me, so I just walked up and I said, "Hey, how you doing?" I just wanted to say hi, and I introduced myself to him. He was carrying like an old shopping bag with VHS tapes, some old binders, some training books, and he gifted them to me. And his name is John. And John had these VHS tapes of Dr. Ken. He gave me the original Brooks Cubic dinosaur training files. And I can't recall if I even heard of Dr. Ken before this time. I may have heard of him, but didn't really dig into any of his information. And what's ironic is I've got these old magazines sprawled out here from the mid-'80s that I think my older brother actually had, but I never read them. So I went home that night. I played the VHS tape of watching Dr. Ken train, and there was these kind of two different episodes on this VHS tape. So one was Dr. Ken just training, thrashing in his own garage, and I made an immediate connection right then and there. I said, wow, look at this guy. He's training in his garage. He's just going all out, destroying everything in his sight. He's got the music blasting. I felt an immediate connection to him. The other training footage was of Dr. Ken training athletes. I'm not sure what university it was, but I think it was Virginia Tech. And he was training these guys, what we would call old school. And Dr. Ken was really the innovator of these methods. I'm watching these guys do sprints up the stadium stairs wearing a weight vest. I'm watching them push trucks across the football field. And the funniest part at the end was after the guy pushed the truck across the field going through this whole strongman circuit, he collapsed and the coach came out with a garden hose and hosed it down his legs. So I remember laughing so hard because when I came across that video, this was the beginning of hearing about mobility and flexibility and recovery. And I was like, wow, that must have been early days recovery where the guy passes out and just hose down the legs. But I saw him doing farmer walks. I saw him doing tire flips, and he was just training these guys with intensity. And it was at a time where I was coming into the strength and conditioning field where there was a lot of talk about functional training. And the functional training was using, a stability ball, standing on one leg. And in my heart, I remember saying, man, I just don't connect to that stuff. And then I come across Dr. Ken wearing jeans or work boots and overalls and chalk and just blasting the music. And I said, man, this guy is a kindred spirit. Like this is my guy. And I became super inspired by him. And in those early days of eBay, after seeing these VHS tapes that were gifted to me, I had heard about Dr. Ken being an author in multiple magazines. So on those early days of eBay, I reached out to somebody who was selling all kinds of vintage bodybuilding and strength magazines. So I sent the guy a message and I said, I'm looking for a magazine or a series of articles written by Dr. Ken Leistner. Would you happen to have it? The guy gets back to me some day or two later and told me that he scoured his entire warehouse for these Dr. Ken articles. And when I came across these articles, it started expanding my thoughts from picking up, normal gym equipment, where I started going to local junkyards and training with anything, I began to look at anything as something to get me strong. So check these out. These were from the mid-'80s Muscular Development magazine, and you could see some early models of a safety squat, right? Or a belt squat. And this is actually Dr. Ken Leistner's son, Kevin Tolbert, who I believe is a strength coach, I think, as of now in Michigan. But Kevin Tolbert was he's a legend because of how strong he was. The story is he squatted 600 pounds for 30 reps. But look at some of the training tools Dr. Ken was using. These are old missiles, okay? This training article was called Bombs Away. And it was really that talk about Dr. Ken saying, listen, you could train with anything to get strong. It doesn't have to be a crazy movement. So he was doing carries with the missiles, farmer walks, military presses, curls. Here's some early talk about thick bar training, stuff that I had never really heard about until, the early 2000s, the late 90s. Here's a photo of his son, Kevin Tolbert, doing thick bar curls. I mean, when I look at Kevin and the size of him, I say to myself, man, that dude is a tank. He could run through a brick wall. And this article inspired me to hunt down an anvil. Seeing the photo of Kevin doing curls with an anvil, it just blew my mind. And that first anvil that I picked up was off of early days Craigslist. And check out this last one I want to show you. These are steel beams that Dr. Ken had handles welded onto them. And it just got me thinking, look at the basic stuff that he's doing, yet he's developing monsters. Farmer walks, one-arm deadlifts, military presses, squats. So since those early days of being gifted with Dr. Ken training VHS tapes, people have found out that I have this super inspiring connection with Dr. Ken and another buddy of mine, John McKenna, who's been featured on PLAE. He gifted me with an old newsletter that Dr. Ken used to put into training. And what is it called? Hard Training. I mean, the message right there just blows my mind. And reading these articles by Dr. Ken, it always comes down to a couple essentials, a couple basic things. He talks about consistency. He talks about intensity. He talks about sticking to the basics, and he talks about hard work. These are things that, as I like to say, they're so simple, it's complicated. Because Dr. Ken spoke about, we get too carried away in the complication of things when we need to just attack those basics. And Dr. Ken has written for probably every bodybuilding and strength magazine out there. You could Google his name, and I've found that some of the old powerlifting websites still have him writing for them. And here's a little excerpt from an article he wrote in Milo, which is from Iron Mind. And Dr. Ken no longer writes for Milo magazine from Iron Mind. And I remember when he wrote the last article, he wrote it in such a way where he expressed that he's just not sure if he could keep telling people that it's all about hard work and the basics. And I remember saying to myself, wow, what's my timeline look like? Because that's what I talk about. No fads, no gimmicks, just busting your butt on the basics. So listen to this little excerpt out of this article. And the article is titled Supersets and the Art of Not Bombing and Blitzing. And bombing and blitzing was kind of like an old word or an old phrase used in the Joe Weider magazines by guys like Arnold and other bodybuilders from the golden era. So Dr. Ken says, there was a romance connected to the cult of the hardcore trainees, knowing that we were among the very few who got it, who knew how to get bigger and stronger while they didn't. So it was kind of like you got that feeling of an us versus them. There's those of us that don't care where we train. We don't care what kind of equipment we have. It says, these trainees, of course, included myself, because I too thought that if it weren't true, it wouldn't be in the magazine and the newsstand. So meaning he was reading, the magazines when he was younger, and he felt kind of like, man, this stuff's a bit fabricated. And reading Dr. Ken's articles and seeing his VHS tape, it brought me to the conclusion of strength doesn't discriminate. It doesn't care the color of your skin. It doesn't care where you're from. It doesn't even care what equipment you're using. You could use, bombs. You could use anvils. I remember the first gym after watching Dr. Ken, I went around the side of the auto garage next to my gym, and in the back was an old radiator, and I think it's still on my YouTube. I think I called it like junkyard training. And I remember just picking it up and throwing it and carrying it, and I remember feeling strong. It gave you a different emotional and psychological effect. And a great gift that I want to close out for those of you watching it on video. This book was gifted to me by my friend Jim Wendler, okay? But this is a compilation of all the original and early days powerlifting magazines that came from, I believe, Strength and Health, which I now have all the originals, but it was given to Jim Wendler. Jim devoured it, read it, and Jim knew how much I loved it, so Jim gifted it to me. But Dr. Ken wrote to him and said, this is my compilation of the best powerlifting articles from the Weider magazines in the 60s. Now, who wrote those articles or who was interviewed in them? None other than Bill Peanuts West, which is where Westside Barbell originated. Bill Peanuts West gym was called the West Muscle Factory, was out of his house. It was where they experimented and created powerlifting, suits by taking bed sheets and wrapping it around their legs for compression, training, box squats or isometric pulls. But this book is all of those old school articles from the 60s, all on powerlifting, and it's amazing. Here we are, almost 60 years later, and this is the stuff that inspired Louis Simmons to create Westside Barbell. This is the stuff that created some of the strongest men to ever walk the planet of Earth. And then I gotta thank Dr. Ken for the inspiration, because it has really shaped me, and also knowing that he once upon a time had a gym. It was called Iron Island. I've actually got Iron Island plates at the Underground Strength Gym. He shut it down and he went back to just training the guys out of his garage, because that's where his heart was at. So it's like this reminder that when you truly love training, like you keep that purity, that's what allows you to keep going. It allows you to have the passion because you work with the right people. You surround yourself in the right environment. So Dr. Ken, if you're out there watching, or anybody who knows Dr. Ken, I hope he knows how much of an inspiration he's been to me. I hope you take this video or listening to the podcast and you get inspired to, break the rules of traditional strength training, because I believe that Dr. Ken and guys like Bob Zuver from Zuver's Hall of Fame Gym, they really brought to life this kind of no rules training that built strong, tough people, whether they were in sports or not. It didn't matter. So that's it for this episode of Iron Roots Podcast. Hope you enjoy this podcast. If you're watching us on YouTube, leave some comments, leave us questions, share it with your friends. If you're listening to us on iTunes or anywhere where you could listen, leave a review. We're going to be seeing who leaves the best comments, who leaves the best reviews. We're going to pick some special winners to get some cool Iron Roots t-shirts. So stand by on that, and we'll talk to you in the next episode. Thanks for watching. See you next time.